Hello and welcome back to American Sporting Classics. Today we are going to be discussing two of my absolute favorite carvers of all times, the Ward brothers. Lem and Steve Ward were brothers that grew up in Crisfield, Maryland. They were both born just before the turn of the last century. I think Steve was born in 1895 and Lem in 1896, and grew up in a very small town. Crisfield was out in the country. You had to work at a very young age to put food on your table and to get by. Their father, Travis Ward, made some decoys early in the beginning of the 1900s, and Lem and Steve decided to make a go at making decoys. I think they made their first decoys between 1910 and 1920, and from that point in time they carved over a 50 or 60 year carving career. Their styles changed many times, and they were some of the most prolific decoy carvers that made decoys in North America over time. I had the good fortune of meeting Lem and Steve when I was still fairly young. I was probably 10 or 12 the first time that I went to their shop with my dad. My dad was very much involved in the decoy world in the late 60s through the 70s and 80s. And we lived on the Eastern Shore at that time. And we went to visit them the first time, and as a young kid, and I was just remember being just in awe of these two wonderful gentlemen. They were they weren't very educated, but you could tell that these people were special. I remember when we left, I told my dad that I knew that we had been in the presence of two very special people, and my dad agreed. It was like I had goosebumps, and for a 10 or 12-year-old kid, feeling that from a couple of old men, that memory to me is pretty amazing. So anyway, they started, as I say, in the 1910 to 1920. Their styles changed many times over the years. Their earliest decoys were made to shoot ducks over. One of the earlier styles, they made rigs of decoys for decoy clubs, hunting clubs, and this is considered a bishop's head style Canada goose. This one happens to be very small. Most of the bishop's head geese were larger than this, but they have a couple of identifying features, one being what they call the Roman nose, and then most of the bishop's head birds have what I call the rump bump. There's a little bump underneath where the rear end would be of the decoys. Very stylish decoys, some of the finest decoys that they made. These would have been made in the early 30s and are absolutely iconic examples of their decoys. In addition to carving, they were also barbers. They were also artists. Steve did most of the carving, and Lem did most of the painting. Here are a couple examples of plaques that they did. They did some paintings over the years, and these are a couple of plaques. I think this one is dated 1947, and that is by Lem, and then a pair of mallards. And this one is also 47, and a pair of pheasants, and just beautiful artistry. As you can see, Lem, actually one of his hands was sort of crippled up, but he would use that as a guide when he would paint. He would use his crippled hand as a guide to steady his brush. So just two wonderful guys. So those paintings were done in '47. As time went on and the advent of plastic decoys came into vogue, they started to do more decorative style decoys. This is hollow and made of cedar, but this decoy was not made to hunt over. This Canada goose was made for the shelf. And this was actually done in, it's dated 1969, and it says, for our friend Mort Hansen. Mort was a early and prominent collector and dealer in the decoy world, and his grandson and I today are dear friends, Greg Hansen. So this was made for Mort Hansen in the late '60s, and as you can see, a very different style from the earlier Bishop's Head model. And just a few more. Here's a decorative and oversized Drake Mallard. This is signed and dated by both, I don't know if you can see that or not, but was signed by both Lem and Steve and dated 1971, and a beautiful solid cedar, oversized mallard, again in the style of some of the earlier hunting decoys, but by the '70s they were making decoys to put on your mantle as opposed to using your hunting rig. And this is kind of an interesting artifact. This is a head that was intended to go on one of their decoys that never made it. They had a reject pile in their shop, and if Steve was working on something and he decided he didn't like it, he would throw the body or the head on the reject pile. And one of their neighbors, Lloyd Tyler, was known to raid their reject pile, and he would take the partially carved bodies and heads home and finish them and put paint on them and sell them as his decoys. So they did what they had to at that time. They were doing this to put food on their table, and but that's just a wonderful artifact that was never finished, but was rescued probably from their reject pile, although it's a beautiful head. There are a number of books on the Ward brothers. This one is L.T. Ward and Brother Wildfowl Counterfeiters. Don't know if the reflection doesn't look that good on that. It's a nice book, has some different examples. This is nice in that it is actually signed by Lem and Steve. People asked them in later years to sign all sorts of things, and so they signed and dated this 1973. Probably the best book on their decoys is The Ward Brothers Decoys, A Collector's Guide by Ron Gard and Brian McGrath. This is a wonderful reference material if you are interested in using, having a nice reference book for their decoys. And then finally, there's one other book that I wanted to share. This is called Closed for Business, the complete collection of Steve Ward's poetry. They wrote poetry, they were barbers, they sang in a barbershop quartet, and some of their poetry is just amazing. And I'd just like to share one of the poems that's in this book. It's called The Drifter. I'm just an old has-been decoy, no ribbons have I won. My sides and head are full of shot from many a blazing gun. My home has been the river, just drifting along with the tide. No roof have I had for a shelter, no one place where I could abide. I've rocked to winter's wild fury, I've scorched in the heat of the sun. I've drifted and drifted and drifted, for tides never cease to run. I was picked up by some fool collector who put me up on a shelf, but my place is out on the river, where I can drift all by myself. I want to go back to the shoreline where flying clouds hang thick and low, and get the touch of raindrops and the velvety soft touch of the snow. That just kind of exemplifies who these two fellas were. They didn't have decades of formal education, but they were so in touch with the world around them. They were the nicest, some of the nicest carvers that I met early on in my life around decoys, and for that I'm forever grateful. So anyway, again, we hope you're enjoying our YouTube channel. If you do, give us a like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to check out our website, www.americansportingclassics.com. We'll see you soon.